And today the ds-incubator is a follow-up of last meetup where we covered the simplified version of the GitHub flow. And today we are going to kind of explore it in more of a kind of a theoretical way to kind of try visualize what the workflow looks like. Because what we did last time, although it did cover every step of the GitHub flow, you may have not realized because a lot of the magic came directly from GitHub. So GitHub does a lot of things for you when you do the kind of shortcut approach that we used last week. So today, I started developing the materials and realized that probably I'm too ambitious. So I don't think we'll kind of probably get to the practical part. So hopefully this will be the motivating section, and next week we can probably get to do something hands-on, or you can do the hands-on part on your own at home. So basically the idea is to follow, I'm following the instructions from the book Happy Git with R, and it has a section dedicated to this daily workflow that is called fork and clone. And it is one of the most useful workflows because it helps basically collaborate happily with others. And the kind of take-home message from the chapter of that book is that if you are in doubt about which workflow to follow, if the kind of simpler workflow clone or this more complex workflow fork and clone, if you're in doubt, then you would probably want to do fork and clone because it's kind of safer. And even when I'm working with myself, many times I do the more complex workflow fork and clone, because sometimes I want to contribute to the, for example, repositories that live in 2 degrees, not as a maintainer, but as a collaborator. So, this hopefully will make sense soon. So the objectives of kind of the meetup, although it might be broken up in two, is to first understand visually what this workflow looks like. Second, to probably expose some problems that we may have in our setups, to motivate the more automatic way of setting things up that UseThis allows or other frameworks allow. I'm gonna be focusing mostly on UseThis, but there is also, for example, great automated setup via the GH command line application, which is basically the command line tool that GitHub created to interact with GitHub from the command line, from the terminal. And maybe your Git client also has some automatic setups, but because there are a great number of Git clients, you kind of need to figure out, depending on what's your preference, depending on what is the client that you use, you will need to figure out how to do that yourself. So I'm going to explain kind of the more vanilla approaches, and then you can adapt that to your own likings. So you may have realized that the GitHub issue kind of is now a little bit out of sync with the document that you are seeing here. And by the way, if you are lost, the GitHub the document is as usual. The date of today minus DSI for ds-incubator. So the doc is a little bit out of sync because as I develop the content, I kind of change my mind about a few things. So I will need to update the GitHub issue, but maybe that's not that important. So the first thing why this is important is because the GitHub, the fork and clone workflow is very common. And second, it is important because we are going to be using this workflow during the upcoming TidyDS workshop. And I'm expecting to dedicate every meetup before the workshop to refresh some of the tools that we will use during the workshop. But even if you don't join the workshop, this series of meetups should also be helpful because it has been almost a year since last time we covered this topic. So it's good to refresh. And also because new people have joined the organization after we deliver that content. It is also important because they use this package. So, the reason why I want to kind of introduce you again, maybe, to the use this package is because it helps you implement the GitHub flow in a very automatic way, so you don't have to think too much about it, and you can avoid some of the common mistakes. And finally, another goal of this meetup is also to make you a bit more familiar with the Git features that you have already available to you through RStudio, which some people I know use, but maybe other people do not use. So before you decide if you want to use them or not, I think it's a good idea to have a good understanding of what you can and what you cannot do directly from RStudio before you kind of add some other tool, some other layer to your work. So the idea of what we're going to be covering probably across 2 meetups is, first, today we're going to be visualizing the workflow with some images that I borrowed from the Happy Git with R book. I'm going to focus on the challenges that a manual workshop might present, and to consider some of the advantages that an automatic workflow or automatic setup can give you. And the practice part, I'm still not sure if we're going to do it as a homework or next week. I'll figure that out later. So this image represents here in yellow in the top left a repository that you can imagine lives, for example, in the 2 degrees organization. So it is them. Even when we do belong to the organization, we can think of the 2 degrees organization as something that is not something that we own. It's kind of owned by the organization. So we can refer to that repository as the repository of some owner. In this case, the organization we belong to. The fork and clone workflow first takes that repository and creates a clone of that, but it has a particular name when that clone then becomes your own, and that name is fork. So what you do is you replicate the owner's repo into your own account, and that is where you get this other one here on the top right. So that is the fork part of the fork and clone workflow. The clone part is where you bring that is now on GitHub. So see that how this horizontal line splits stuff that is here on GitHub. This is the icon of GitHub at the top, and at the bottom we have the icon of our computer. So everything that happens from this horizontal line up is happening online, right? So on the left we have on GitHub the owner repo, and on the right we have our own repo, but again on GitHub. So far, this arrow from left to right, all you did there is the fork part. And then this arrow that goes down is downloading that your copy of the repo into your local computer. And that is the clone part. So the whole thing is the fork and clone workflow. So how could you do that? Well, there is a button on GitHub that you can click to create that fork, and then you can copy the address of your repo and give it to RStudio, for example, so that RStudio clones it. And we are going to be looking at how to do it in a moment. But for now, I wanted to kind of have this picture. So because the focus of today's meetup is understanding, I want to make a pause here to see if this image makes sense and if you have any questions at this point. Okay, it looks like it's clear, right? Thumbs up, right, if it's clear? Yes, good. Probably you already saw these images, and again, they come from the amazing book Happy Git with R by Jenny Bryan and Jim Hester. So, what is the challenge? As you noticed, with the setup that I showed you before, you could be ready to do this happy path where, once you're in your local computer here to the bottom right, let me make this a little bigger. If I can, yes. So here is your computer, here is your RStudio project with the clone that you pull from your repo that is in turn a fork from their repo, the owner's repo. So you can add commits, you can change it in any way because you own that thing, right? And then, there's this happy path where you can push the changes that you do locally to your own repo, here, the one in red. And you can even submit a pull request. Of course, you cannot change the owner's repo directly. You can do it only through a pull request. The complication here is that because, and this is a parenthesis, because we do have access to the GitHub organization of 2 degrees, sometimes we don't realize that we are actually pushing commits directly into the owner's repo, right? But for now, let's just imagine that we always behave in this particular way, where we behave, even with 2 degrees repos, we behave as if we were external collaborators, which is something that I do myself a lot. So this is a happy path, right? From your local repo to your own repo on GitHub, and then from your own repo on GitHub to their repo, to the owner's repo, say the 2 degrees repo, via a pull request. But notice this unhappy path. So there is no arrow. So I'm going to jump back again to the previous slide. So there is no connection between the 2 degrees organization repo, for example, and your repo on your computer. The problem or the challenge is that as time passes, people may continue to add changes to the owner's repo. So someone else may add commits, and the owner's repo falls out of sync with the code that you have in your own repo and the code that you have both. So in your own repo, both on GitHub and locally. So this is one of the challenges of the manual configuration. So let me show you a little bit up to this stage what I mean by I lack this connection here. So for this, I'm going to go to, I think I have here a link somewhere. Yes, I have this repository. I'm sure many of you did this many times, and I'm expecting you to be a little bored because I already know this. But I'm hoping that you will, from kind of breaking the concepts down a little bit more and digging into the theory more that we have before, that you get some kind of aha. So with that better understanding, I'm hoping that you will be also able to kind of solve novel problems as opposed to solving them in a more kind of, okay, step 1, step 2, step 3. You now understand what's going on and how to fix problems. So notice that I'm here in one repository that is in the 2 degrees organization. So I call this a repository that is in someone else's repository. I would like to, use the approach fork and clone to propose some changes to this repository. The first thing I would like to do is to create a fork, and GitHub gives me that button here to create forks. I already see that there's 3 people that have forked this, so I'm curious to see who they are. Actually, I seem to be one of those. So to show this, that just means that I already clicked that button. So when I clicked here, the fork, my user account doesn't appear there because I have already forked. But all I did is just to click that button. So you can do it too. So because I did click that button, then I can go to my own repo, right? So you can see that this is under my user account and it looks just the same, except that I have total control over this repository. I can do whatever I want, right? So at this point, I am on this stage. I am here where I clicked that button and I moved the original repo, I moved a copy of it called fork into my user account. I'm here. So now the next step I'm going to do is this step where I kind of use the address of this remote repository on GitHub to clone it into my local computer. So how do I go about that? So, from my repo, the one that is under my user account, I go to the green button here and I click here or copy. Basically what I want to do is to copy this address. There is 2 possible addresses that you can copy. If you don't know which one you want, you probably want the one that starts with HTTPS, but I use a different protocol. It's something that you may not need to worry about the first day that you do this, or probably not even the 10th day or anything. but I use a different protocol. The thing is that whatever it is here, you can copy, and then you go to, and because we use R, I'm gonna go to our studio, and I have in my, remember I copied that address on my clipboard, so I could paste it. For example, I could paste it here, right? It's there, but I'm gonna paste it in a very specific place. I'm gonna go to the projects icon and click on new project. From the options here, the one that you want is the one that says version control, then the one that says Git, and then I'm going to paste the address there. So this, most of you did it already, but what I want to get at is I want to show you the connections that I have now to prove you that there is a broken link. There is one link that I don't have a connection directly to the owner's repo. That is the whole point of doing this little demo here. So as you can see now, my local repository, my local clone of my repo on GitHub looks just like my own repo on GitHub, right? So it all looks good. But what happens if I do a Git situation report? Use this, gives me this handy function that is called Git situation report, sitrep, that tells me a lot about Git and GitHub and RStudio. It tells me that in terms of my readiness for pull requests, I have a remote repository that has a nickname called origin. That isn't that important right now. But the address of that thing is here in Mauro Lepore-demo. It has been forked from 2 Degrees Investing demo. But notice that where it says upstream, which is the nickname for the owner's repo, it says no such remote. With the situation that I have here, again, let's go back to here. We are at this situation where I have done this part of the triangle, but I'm missing this one here. So if I go down one slide, I could change my repository locally, I could push changes to my own repo, and I could submit pull requests. But if at any point the owner's repo changes because someone in the meantime adds new commits, I don't have a way from my local computer to pull those changes inside my work, my pull request in work. So that is one of the challenges. I mean, it's not a big deal. There is, of course, a way to create that connection. But my point is that you can create that connection in an automatic way without you having to type any weird command on, for example, the terminal. So if you read the instructions of, for example, the book Happy Git with R, just to name many, what you will find is that what you need to do to set up that missing connection is to type to add a new remote into your local Git repository. So it could be something like this. Let me show you. So what I would need to do here is I would need to go to the owner's repository, get the address to the owner's repository, and then go to RStudio and do something like on the terminal, and I'm not expecting you to follow or anything. You would need to do something like git remote add upstream and then paste that address that you got there. And by doing so, the new remotes that you would have in your computer could be 2. You would have one local repository in your computer pointing to 2 different places. One is your origin, so the repository that you have on your own GitHub account, and the other one points to the owner's account. This connection that I have just created, okay, it's not difficult to type, but you need to know. You need to know about the terminal, you need to know about remotes, you need to know about upstream. I don't know if it's a good idea. I don't know if everyone needs to know this, because there is automatic ways to do that. And that is what I wanted to show you next. The first thing I'm gonna do, so now I'm gonna rerun the command git sitrep, to see if, remember that here I have something that says no such remote set for upstream. Let's see if that changed now. Okay, notice how after I added that new remote, so I added that connection that points, to the top left, that points to the owner's repo. Now notice how I do have that connection. It says on the origin, so the nickname of my fork on GitHub is called origin. Remember, that is pointing to my own GitHub account. And then with the nickname upstream, I have now a connection pointing to the owner's account. Okay? And it says you can push. So this is different to what you see here before I created that connection. So making a little pause here, the takeaway from this little demo is that yes, you can do things manually, but yes, it is a bit of a pain because it's very easy to forget to create this kind of connection. And then you're kind of stuck in not being able to pull changes that are happening on the owner's repo while you are working with a pull request. And sometimes while you work with a pull request, the changes that are being added to the owner's repo are relevant to what you're working on because there are conflicts, because one thing builds on the other. So you do want that connection in most cases, except for very, very, very simple pull requests. So let me do now something to inspire you to read how to set things up in a way that you can leverage the power of tools that do all this automatically for you. So this is where I want to get you. You have two routes. You either learn more about Git and you read the ugly commands that, Git, like commands like git remote add upstream and an address, or you learn something more kind of closer to the analysis brain, that is something more intuitive. I'm happy doing the ugly Git commands and I use them all the time, but that's my thing. That's what I do for a living, right? So I read those kinds of books, I hang out with those people on the internet, but I don't think you should. I mean, if you want, you're welcome to do it, but I don't think it's something that you should know. So instead, I recommend other more automated approaches. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to close this project. Also, I'm going to open my terminal. You don't need to kind of know about this, but in my desktop, let's see what I have. No, actually, I think I'm good to go. Yeah, I'm good to go. So what I want to show you is now a different approach where they use this package to create all those connections automatically for me. So I don't have to think much about that. And that approach, so if you're gonna use this package, usually you need to do library use this. I don't generally need to do that because I did something on my R profile, which is a special file that where you can configure things that are always available in every session. But usually you would do library use this. Let me do this a little bigger. And now I use a function that is called create from GitHub that takes a repo specification with the format owner repo. So owner would be in this case 2 degrees, investing, and repo would be demo. In my case, because I have privileges to push to the 2 degrees organization, I need to be specific about fork equals true to tell it that I really want to create a fork first. But before I do that, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to my fork, because remember that I already forked. So I want to kind of, to inspire you, like truly, I want to demonstrate how use this can even create the fork for me, so I don't need to go to GitHub. So I'm going to come here to the settings, and I'm going to delete this repo from here. I need to say, I'm gonna destroy my fork of the main repository. So now I'm going to run this function, right? Create from GitHub with the specification owner repo. And in my case, I specify fork equals true. If you don't have privileges to push to this repo 2 degrees demo, then even if you don't specify fork equals true, the thing will happen anyway. It will just do it because there is no other alternative, right? So, okay, I run that command. And you can see that, use this is doing a bunch of things for me. I mean, a lot more that I can remember, honestly. So let's go back and try to break down that. So, I mean, if you can automate something, why not, right? So there is already, these processes are so systematic and so easy to transform into a program that does it for you, that people have done it and have done it well, and in a way that every time repeats what you want. So this command has created in my desktop a folder called demo that is where I put the stuff. It has forked from the 2 degrees investing demo. Then it has cloned that thing from my fork into the local computer. And then it has added that upstream remote, that connection. Remember that the whole point of my little first demo was to kind of demonstrate that there was a missing connection. So that connection is no longer missing here because use this did it for me directly. And then it pulls changes from upstream just in case someone has added anything there. So automatically it would bring any change that happened kind of the last minute on the owner's repo. So now your local repo is a reflection of the last second of the history of that owner's repo. And then it's doing a bunch of other things that maybe, like for example, opening the project, very convenient. So let's go to that project. So, this step where the project got automatically opened by RStudio, what it resulted is in this other thing. So open this window automatically for me. And now if I type, remember that command, so let's do library, use this. So if I type, remember that command, git_sit situation report, what would you expect on my readiness to submit pull requests? Well, you would expect that this function, because it does all the magic for me, has not only a connection to my origin, but also a connection to that link that I wanted to create, right, to my upstream. So let's run that. And here we are. So the situation report shows that this repository has a connection to my origin, the one that I have, even if I do it manually, but also has already that connection that points to the owner's repo. All that happened magically for me. So let's go back to the slide to kind of debrief. So we are in this happy situation, right, where the function create from GitHub created this connection directly for me. And I can now do the triangle. The triangle is as follows. You always pull changes from your owner's repo. You always push them to your own repo. And then you submit a pull request to upstream, right? And the last, and that's the last, part of this kind of motivational first meetup. So hopefully the next time we are gonna implement this. I would hope that this will kind of have motivated for people to go to. Let me scroll up. I'm sorry for kind of getting you dizzy. I hope to have motivated you to go to this link here that says setup, use this. So with this, if you do what says here, I'm hoping that you will have your local RStudio ready to run the functions of use this and ready to make your life easy, and also ready to work during the workshop with your own RStudio as opposed to RStudio Cloud. The reason why sometimes we use RStudio Cloud is because I'm sure that I can set things up in a way that will work for you, because I don't know how you have your things set up. But if you do follow these instructions, it should work. And if it doesn't work, reach out, just Slack me, and then we can set up a help desk, because I'm truly interested in you having the setup correct. That this is something that is a pain that you go through once per computer and you're done. And then life is so much better. If you are someone like Jackson, you also may like the GH terminal application. It is amazing, and I use it a lot because he taught it to me, and I love it. So you can also do something like GH repo fork and 2degrees investing demo, and that thing will do all the magic that I showed you. It is asking me if I want to clone the fork. It is also noticing that the fork already exists. I say yes. It is cloning it locally. It is doing everything that I showed you. This is not something for you to reproduce. This is just to motivate you. Life is not as painful as you think, you know. I know there is a lot of friction. I know there is a lot of pain, but once you set things up, it takes no time, like truly. This is just to motivate you. Hopefully by next time you will have tried things out, you will have faced some problems, you will have consulted with me or Jackson or anyone else, and we will have helped you kind of get to this stage where things just work. Okay? I can't hear you, Claire. Are we good to go? Okay. I'm very sorry for not making this an interactive tutorial as we usually do, but I felt that at this point we needed to go through every step slowly. So I encourage you to leave your questions and comments on the Google Doc. And I now need to finish because I'm sorry, I'm running late. Okay, thank you very much everyone here. Good. Thank you. Bye everyone.